potent and target an extremely vulnerable demographic. Stereotypes in young adult literature distinguish between characters and create easily comprehensible storylines. According to Chris Crow, an associate professor of English at Brigham Young University, stereotypes within young adult novels are based upon common experiences to, quote, develop minor characters efficiently without detracting from the main flow of their stories, end quote. However, harmful gender stereotypes have been found more frequently within YA literature. These are important to consider because the consistent exposure to stereotypes can create intrinsic gender bias in real society. Janet West confirms the influence of stereotypes in literature on young adults, claiming that books are a particularly potent source. Tawita Akhtar corroborates this, arguing that the interaction between the audience and characters within fiction creates an increased amount of influence than general media. This enables the reader to relate to the characters deeply, allowing the gender bias to infiltrate the audience's gender schema and perception of the real world. Specifically, gender stereotypes within YA literature can be especially harmful for young girls. Consistent with other researchers' findings, Catherine Bouchat, who has a master's in communication and writing from Portland State University, found that a majority of general media contain repetitively negative portrayals of girls and women. These messages undermine their ability to achieve goals and resist cultural gender norms. Multiple researchers claim that because of the struggles that girls face during puberty, adolescent girls are much more susceptible to gender norms within literature. Therefore, it's important to consider how gender stereotypes from YA literature are internalized into society. The Bechdel test, first developed for films by Alison Bechdel, requires 3 simple criteria. The film must contain 2 female characters who speak for over 90 seconds about a topic other than a man. Despite its simplicity, a substantial number of films don't pass the test. Its main purpose is to provide a dramatic statistic quantifying the gender inequality within film and media. Dr. Scott Talisker, in New Literary History, claims that the Bechdel test allows for a data-oriented and objective approach to interpreting bias within media, while also providing a benchmark for films and literature. These are the benefits to the test's simplicity, but that can also cause it to overlook more nuanced indications of gender bias. Raghav Lakoshia and his colleagues argue that the Bechdel test excludes single-character media and ignores the context surrounding female characters. While equal dialogue between men and women is important in terms of representation, intricacies within characters like setting, phrasing, and character depictions are better indications of gender norms. The nature of the Bechdel test ignores the cultural situation and implications of the conversation, rendering it ultimately ineffective. Although there are many detailed analyses for individual YA novels, there's a significant lack of widespread analysis of the literature as a whole. Also, there's a general focus in the professional conversation on the gender bias within literature taught in schools, rather than novels being directly marketed towards adolescents. It's crucial to evaluate what teens, particularly girls, are reading outside of school because it can be unmonitored and highly influential to their identity development and individual bias. Content analysis is an effective method for literature analysis, but it isn't realistically applicable to a whole genre. Judith Hain and her colleagues argue that there needs to be both quantitative and qualitative data to effectively identify and communicate the hidden biases within literature. Therefore, in order to be able to efficiently form data-influenced conclusions about gender dynamics and their influence within YA literature, using the coded approach of content analysis could potentially be coupled with a structure like the Bechdel test. This could preserve the qualitative nature of the Bechdel test without sacrificing accuracy. This leads to my research question: to what extent can a combination of the Bechdel test and content analysis accurately and efficiently evaluate gender stereotypes within YA literature? To address the lack of effective literature analyses, I developed a framework based upon content analysis and the Bechdel test to efficiently evaluate the gender stereotypes within a novel. To select my books for the study, I did a cross-comparison between multiple book lists from varying sources. I aimed to choose lists from different areas of expertise, such as Barnes & Noble, Goodreads, the American Library Association, and a list of recommendations from Pauline Schmidt in the English Journal. This attempts to gain a comprehensive understanding of the most popular and recommended books from different perspectives in the field. For example, Barnes & Noble and the New York Times provide insight into which novels are being directly pushed commercially towards adolescent girls, while the American Library Association presents which books are critically acclaimed in that genre. I selected books that appear 3 or more times, giving me a collection of novels corroborated by multiple perspectives. The chosen lists were non-genre specific, providing a broad picture of the young adult genre as a whole. This led to the selection of the following books: The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, The 13th Child by Aaron Craig, and The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. The analysis method chosen aims to use the structure of the Bechdel test and the trait identification used in Janet West's content analysis, which is shown here. Within the selected traits, I also included Dr. Scott Solisker's actor and actin theory, considering whether the character is actively controlling their storyline or simply reacting to and mediating situations. I then developed this set of criteria to apply to each novel. I chose these questions because they allow for consideration of underlying meanings that the Bechdel test fails to identify. Using the criteria of my analysis, I determined whether each character individually rejects or conforms to gender stereotypes. If the results showed the character rejecting gender stereotypes, 1 point was added to the book's total. If the character conformed to gender stereotypes, no points were added. Repeating this process for each main character using the flowchart model here, every book was awarded a total relating to how progressively the characters were portrayed. By then dividing each total by the number of characters analyzed, a number between 0 and 1 was generated for each book. This allowed the books to be compared on the same scale, revealing the overall presence of gender stereotypes within each novel. Ranging from 0 to 1, a score closer to 0 indicates a higher ratio of stereotypical characters and vice versa. This strategy is ideal for analysis because it preserves the quantitative results that make the Bechdel test powerful while providing a more nuanced analysis of the text. Comparing the analyses of each novel to the results from the test demonstrates the potential connection between a novel's gender stereotypes and its score. The Hunger Games, Percy Jackson, and Better Than the Movies scored within the middle to high range with a 0.77, 0.625, and 0.8 respectively. This middle tier score is relatively accurate to the meaning of these novels because the characters' traits generally have a uniform gender, but the overall message of the books promotes non-stereotypical messages about women. In Better Than the Movies, the female protagonist has 3 masculine traits and 1 feminine trait, and the main love interest has 1 masculine trait and 4 feminine. Although these traits are opposite to the character's gender, the uniformity still promotes less complex and authentic character depictions. However, the meaning of the story focuses on Liz's acceptance of herself and forgiveness of her romantic rival, promoting an overall progressive message. This pattern is also reflected in The Hunger Games. Katniss, the female protagonist, has an even balance with 4 masculine traits and 3 feminine traits, but Peeta, her male counterpart, has a drastic majority of feminine traits. Additionally, Gale is very stereotypically masculine with 4 masculine traits and 1 feminine, and Cinna is the opposite with a majority of feminine traits. Overall, though, the novel is a broader commentary on class and propaganda, as well as showing an example of a strong and capable female protagonist controlling her future. Therefore, the score of 0.77 is an accurate reflection of the novel's stereotypical values. Additionally, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief also follows this trend, with Percy embodying a stereotypical hero within a plot including wider meanings of friendship and acceptance. Although Percy's traits are significantly unbalanced, the novel is more about his found family and the value of friendship than Percy's ultimate rise to strength. This is represented in the score of 0.65. Contrasting with the other novels, The 13th Child also scored highly with a 0.8, but follows an opposing structure. The main characters have much more balanced traits, with Hazel earning 3 masculine traits and 2 feminine. Merrick, her godfather, has 2 masculine traits and 5 feminine, and Margot, the antagonist, has 3 masculine and 4 feminine traits. The more evenly balanced traits would suggest a higher score than the other novels. However, the plot of The 13th Child has a significantly stereotypical ending. While Hazel sacrifices her healing gift and lengthened lifespan in exchange for a life as Leopold's wife, it follows the trend of women in literature ending the book as married. The score of 0.8 generally reflects this because Hazel's character individually is an unstereotypical heroine, but the resolution of the plot promotes a negative cliché about female characters. Finally, The Inheritance Games earned a 0.2, the lowest of the sample. The differences between this book and the other novels are clear, with the characters in the inheritance games having significantly less complex trait breakdowns and overall a much more stereotypical story arc. For example, all of the boys have significantly more masculine personalities, Grayson the most drastic with 4 masculine traits and 0 feminine traits. Avery, the protagonist, does also have a majority of masculine traits, but like the boys, they are extremely unbalanced. Also, part of the plot relies on the fact that Avery's intelligence and resilience is one of a kind, perpetuating the idea that it's rare for a female to possess her level of intellect. Finally, there's a significant subplot involving Avery's sister, Libby. Libby's feminine personality leads her to become susceptible to abuse from her ex-boyfriend, requiring protection from one of the brothers. Her inability to protect herself over a relationship and reliance on another man to do it for her projects an image of women as weak. This undermines her independence and common sense. The emphasis on the uniqueness of Avery's intelligence, as well as the highly stereotypical supporting cast, is demonstrated in the generally accurate score of 0.2. There are a few limitations to the research method which must be addressed. Because of the sampling method and time constraints, the sample size is small and could potentially give an inaccurate representation of the young adult genre. Because of that, the field would benefit from further research applying this method to a larger sample size, drawing more impactful conclusions about this test's efficacy. Additionally, the brief list of stereotypical feminine and masculine traits using this method could limit the effectiveness of this test. Many of the characters included in this analysis displayed more traits than included in the list, limiting the ability of the test to accurately represent their characters. Curating a longer list of traits that more accurately reflects how characters are commonly represented within media would improve the scope and thoroughness of the test. Future research broadening the sample size and lists of traits would improve the accuracy of the test to more effectively reflect the stereotypes within a genre of novels. Improving this test facilitates a more accurate representation of gender stereotypes within YA literature. This is crucial because it allows for more informed recommendations towards developing children, particularly girls, to read. Hayne and her colleagues agree that there needs to be an analysis method, including both quantitative and qualitative analysis to effectively evaluate literature. This improved test has the potential to do this, screening media for common stereotypes and filtering what kind of messages are being sent to impressionable preteen girls. This could mitigate some of the negative impacts of gender stereotypes within literature. Additionally, because of the general focus in the field on literature taught in schools, applying this method to a larger sample size of books directly recommended to adolescents has the potential to be informative of the greater stereotypes within the YA genre. It's crucial to evaluate the literature read for leisure because the unmonitored environment can cause the potential stereotypes to be more influential and unnoticed. Therefore, further application of this test could protect impressionable adolescent girls from internalizing harmful stereotypes. Gender stereotypes in media can be dangerous, often targeting adolescent girls and affecting how they view themselves and others within society. Therefore, it's important to consider what stereotypes might be present in literature available to these vulnerable demographics. Combining the quantitative structure of the Bechdel test with the accuracy of traditional content analysis, the chosen method aims to evaluate young adult literature for implicit gender stereotypes. Based on the comparison between the results generated from the test and a basic textual analysis, the test that was created appears to accurately score novels based upon the number of gender cliches present. With some further research and improvement, this test has the potential to allow individuals to understand stereotypes otherwise unnoticed within highly influential pieces of media such as novels. Here are my references. Thank you for listening. Any questions? I don't know about specific books, but I would have liked to choose like a specific genre or compare specific genres to see how it, like the effectiveness and how it differs between genres of books.
In the books that were on the list that you chose from, did you notice any trends in genres that were prevalent on those lists?
Some of them were basically no. I mean, the most popular are like romance and realistic fiction, but I feel like there's a lot of fantasy as well. I feel like there was a pretty wide variety of genres. I didn't include that in my analysis, but that would be interesting to apply in further research. Yeah. Yeah.
How did you decide what were masculine traits?
I used the trait list from Janet West's content analysis, part of my research, but that list definitely could be like added onto and altered to be more effective.